Hello everyone, Mark Surgeon here, and we are back with another video. So a lot of things I want to discuss today, mostly about secondary shapes and how to create some, not exactly details, but important parts within a primary shape. So the primary shape is basically the outline, what you see here, and the main volumes and the main areas. Those are the primary parts, and everything else is coming after this. And when we are at the skin level, we can go into the third level, the final details, and then you can refine it till the end of time. Okay, so for now, what you see here, this is a split screen, and if you wish to do something like this, you can achieve that by having two models, and these are single models, so there's no additional parts. This is one of the reasons why I don't have them, just a two-parter. And the way to achieve this is going to transform and using this split screen option. So 0, everything is in place, and when we are using this, we have a left to right, we have an up and down, we have a right to left, and a down to up, basically. So this is a kind of a variation. Now the first thing is, as you see, the eyes are totally different. So when you are using subdivision levels, and we have subdivision levels here, we have quite a few. So if we are using Shift D, we can walk down and walk up with the resolution. And when you are cleaning up something or modifying something, what you have to know that these subdivision layers are depending on each other, but they are not exactly the same. So what do I mean? Every data set, it belongs to a specific level of sculpting. So this means even if I'm at the low level, for example here, I'm at the simple standard brush using the shift to smooth out things, and I want to remove this this eye area. Okay, forgot to turn on symmetry, so symmetry. And when I'm leveling up, even if I expect to have completely rid of the eyes, this level has more data, and because it has more data, it's not working that way. So when you have to clean up something, smoothing out something, repair a paint, pay attention to walk the ladder and perform your cleanup process on all stages. All right. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's actually useful. There are many things, and okay, this is the final level. We have about 500. I will increase that, but that's just the short initial intro for these subdivisions. So whenever you do subdivisions, please check them in all level. If you have to delete or modify something, walk up and down and look if the changes are matching in your expected way. Now another thing is, when we are creating a form, forms and shapes are usually coming from positive forms. That means convex forms, so like bumps. And when you have a negative shape, that's usually a result of meeting of two positive shapes. Now the best brush for this is the BCA brush. This is what I really do like: BCT, BCA, B clay build-up. These are pretty good. And just let me start this. Maybe the intensity is too high. And the goal of using these clay brushes, and I will explain just in a second. So just right now, I'm just making a few strokes, looking for the shape, looking for watching it from below, watching from above, and checking if the curviness is there as I'm expecting that. Okay, so this is just like drawing. If you have ever seen drawing of a sculptor, drawings like this can really emphasize on the cross sections. So now this is the neck part. I can increase the jaw. The jaw is much more stronger on the actual figure in my mind. So smoothing out a few things, but I'm using smoothing brush pretty sparingly. Okay, smoothing too much will actually erode your sculpting work. Okay, I will just in a second I will explain what's going on with this. So smoothing, just a tiny smoothing, not much, and the jaw is much more pronounced, much more strong, much more powerful in general. Yes, we want to have a little bit more on the chin as well, and building up, and this cavity is also missing, and just adding up. Okay, and the throat. And as you see, with my brush strokes, I try to follow the direction and the dynamics of the shape, because we have. So it's just like in the industrial design drawings and the sculpting drawings. This is a huge benefit when you do this way. Now, as you see, the texture is created from the brush, and compared to the kind of a flat sides, this has already started to make to coming to life. Okay, so this is much more informative. There's much more things going on. Not necessarily have to keep it this way. To clean up this, instead of using a smoothing brush, we can use modified smoothing or a very light smoothing. That's also a way to do it. But we can use a flatten brush, BFA, or polish brush as well. Flatten brush is not so super strong, and as you see, flatten brush is not exactly scraping off material. Flatten brush is like having a knife with your clay model and just pushing it into gently and just smoothing out things, but with the flat side of the knife. Okay, like compressing the details into. It's not eroding the details, it is actually just compressing them. And if you compress them too much, yes, they will be gone, but other than that, this is really a kind of a non-destructive way to preserve brushstroke details and still maintain a nice and smooth form in general. And the way your brush strokes are handled can be also an important part. So I'm running across now through this intersection. So I'm running across to generate the desired connection. So let me add some more. Okay, and of course I don't want to spend ages doing this, but as you see now, this is a much more solid shape, and it looks much more solid and much more dense. Even if you are not using the clay brush, for example, if you just have a surface that is too smooth, it's unbelievably smooth, so you can still break it up by having some light strokes around. Okay, you can also have a very light clay brush if you wish, just to add the directions, the power lines to the skin or anything else what you have as cover. Alright, so it works pretty well with fabrics too and other parts as well. Alright, so that is about the main techniques. If you want to look, you can look for Artists Anatomy, Imagine FX, Gottfried Baumann's. They're all great resources for that. Okay, now going back with the clay brush and a few masking things coming up in mind, but these masks are automatic masks, so going to brush and using the auto masking functions, and a few things may be really useful, especially if you want to, for example, separate some part. So if we have this model and we want to separate it, and we can do a few things here. So Shift F, and as you see here, the poly paints are there, the polygon groups, and some brushes can use this function a lot. So mask by polygroups. Imagine that I have a clay brush will be a good friend for now. So by default, I can just paint through. But if I want to protect a certain polygroup for technical reasons, I can turn this on, mask by polygroups, and then it will just stop where the polygon group is stopping. Alright, this is great if you have, for example, fingers set up with individual polygon groups, or you have teeth with individual polygon groups and the teeth are really tight and dense, but you want to quickly work on them and don't want to have hundreds of parts. This is a really neat way. So mask by polygroups, this is a great option. The other thing is we have the backface mask. Now backface mask It may not work here because we don't have so much thin parts, but briefly I've mentioned before, backface mask is really great if you're sculpting clothing and having something that is actually thin and two-sided. So here is the brush that I want to use now. I'm just quickly distorting this BMV. Maybe pull this brush, pull this ear quite a lot and make it super thin. Okay, well, it's quite ugly now. Okay, and BCA, and the backface mask is on. Now turn it off and see what happens. So I'm sculpting on this side, and as you see, the back side is collapsing. And this is why we have to have, and it's a good idea to keep backface mask on, because it avoids to have such issues. Alright, so that is backface mask. Excellent for, again, small details around the lips, around the nose, ears, areas, finger webs, whatever. This is a really useful stuff. And all these settings, well, keep that in mind, they will be tied to your brush. So now backface mask is turned on, but if I'm switching to BMV, brush, move brush, this one's gone. Okay, so BCA going back, backface mask on. Okay, what else? We have color mask. There's no color yet, but basically it's working the same way. So if I have this figure here, which one is, let me go into poly paint, and if I have texture, let me just turn this off. Where are you? Texture map, do we have it? Okay, I'm turning this off. This is the poly paint, and if I'm going with a yellowish tone, I can turn color mask and start painting on here, and it reduces a little bit. It's slightly stronger. May I give it a boost? So start here, and this is just less as I'm moving on another direction. So that works as well. With a different setting, and it pulls, and it's even stronger for certain parts. You can see now. Okay, so it requires adjustments depending a lot on how your model is painted. If you have more intense colors, it certainly works better. The other thing is that you can use, which one is not really significant in here because these are nuances, but here's the opportunity for me to talk about how you can use these graph editors in general. So when you have a mask and you have an option to use the graph, the curve, the way to, if you just drop in your pen, you can place a point, and this will influence how the masking is working. If you are dragging it outside and moving it back, it will be a different point, a corner point. So tap, it will be, by default, it will be a soft curve. But if you're dragging and moving back, it will be sharp. And if you're dragging and dropping, then it will be gone. Okay, so this is how these are working. It's always a good idea to test around, and here you go, we can reset if you wish. Okay, so that is about the color mask. Now what else? We have topological. Now topological, let me go back with my other models. So first of all, it's D, and yeah, we are at the higher resolution. So switching subtools, ZBrush body, and what topological does. So a good example is inflate brush, BIN. An inflate brush, if you are using it in a large size, this is great for quickly changing up proportions. So if you want to add some beef on the figure, this is a great way to do it. If the brush is small, it will be just a little bulge, which one is, honestly, it's really hard to control. So the way I like to use it is usually in a larger size. If you're holding down Alt key, it is actually shrinking. Okay, so this is, again, this is a great design tool in general if you want to create nice and interesting proportions on the fly. The reason we are talking about inflate brush is because, for example, typical issue is the fingers. If you are using Dynamesh for hands or anything, the fingers can become really fragile and frail and thin. To increase it, you can just pump in some air with an inflate brush. But the problem with that is it's hard to control, and everything is inflated, not just the specific finger you want to. So you can turn on topological, and that way it is still big in size, so I have to be reasonable, and resolution is too high. It's more interactive. Okay, and as you see, so I can just crank this up slightly, with an easier method. So topological, this is one way to use topological function and masking. The other way to use is, let me go a star, and so just split screen is off now, and I will just use a tool. Where are you, our friend? Hello darkness, my old friend. Okay, here's it, the demo head. Okay, this is a tool file, so now don't get confused. I don't want to get rid of my project. I just want to use a new tool here. So getting back, and BMT, that is move topological brush. Move topological brush, yeah, autosave. It basically has this function turned on. The values are different, so range is 3 and 2. The smooth, the default is 5.5. By the way, these settings are really good. So the brush is smaller, and as you see, because we have topological function on, we can move these things separately. Oh yes, yeah baby. Okay, so that's the purpose of having move topological. The logic behind it, let me walk down Shift D and show it to you, that we have the mesh, and when you are using topological, it's actually counting the edges. So instead of having just the radius of the brush, it is measuring distance in edge length. Okay, so to reach up this part, it's not by simply the radial distance, it is by walking through the edges and measuring the distance along the edges, and this is why it is not reaching up to the bottom or lower lip. While if it's not on, we can now we have a distance where you're usually moving things together. Okay, so that is the point. So BMT, BMV, that's the only difference between BMT and BMV, is which we have the topological function turned on, as far as I know at least. Okay, so let me go back here, and topology, the split screen was off, and Shift F, and just moving along. Okay, a few things. I want to use the cavity, but for cavity, it's better if I have some BCA, some little bit of a design thing. Okay, is it in a higher? Yes, we are now in a higher level. So I'm just adding up these things around. So simply very dirty way, not exactly doing the time, and certainly not as detailed as it should be. And then I'm using Alt key and just scraping in, and then just pulling this up, and just working on basically just a design that I have, and I'm just making a copy. This is how I did basically the original one, so nothing really crazy going on. Okay, so this is a pattern. Let me just make it more protruding. And here comes the idea of using cavities. So what you see here, this is cavity painting, and the filter I was using, this could be used in other brushes as well, not just painting. I'll use BNO. This is noise brush, BNO, and we'll turn on cavity mask. And we have a larger brush. Larger brush means it's sampling a larger area, and it can tell that, okay, where we have the actual cavity, and then we can just start working up the cavity and use the noise as is. Okay, here for example we have this area. Alright, so, the point of using this is to have a little bit of control how much you're working on the depth. Okay, the more depth you have, the more depth the sculpt has, it is usually the better. Okay, just let me turn this off and tell another technique. I'll tell you about another technique. I will do some noise without the cavity mask here, and show you the technique I want to discuss, and that is about having a detailed area, having some smooth, having some interesting area created, but it's too much, it's too strong. Usually you have to dial it down and have some more control over it, because it's definitely too much for the figure, especially if I have some tiny details and not things like this. Now what to do is you can switch to a different smoothing brush. So BS to get to smoothing brushes, and the brush I'm looking for is smooth peaks. And yes, this is a shift brush assigned to the shift key, so this is why we're not seeing it, only if we have shift key pressed. And what shift peaks does is I can smooth out the top areas and keep the bottom. Okay, so keep the bottom, and this is generating a really nice transitional effect. As you see, it's not that super harsh anymore. We have quite a lot of details. Okay, another thing that may be useful and interesting, if you're combining, for example, this one with a nudge brush. So B and U, it's a nudge brush, and you can actually just pull this up. And as you see, as you're pulling this up, it's just actually just wrinkling up. And for example, you can come back with a BIN inflate brush and inflate the areas slightly. Okay, we have a topological function with the inflate, and it's just slowing down things. So we can go back, and as we're inflating, these wrinkles are just pushing together. This one it's like whole lava. Right now, let me switch to a different part of the model that I have created here, and that is the shoulders and this pattern, what you see here. Of course, it could be done by painting each of them individually, but this is not really the best tactics. So to create an alpha, you can do that by creating it in other software like Photoshop or so many other softwares, but you can actually create quite nice stuff within ZBrush, and this is really a powerful part here. So let me go transform and split screen off and make it fit, and insert a plain 3D, and we don't need the brush with the start subtool. And just a second, and here we go. Let me check this. Now, when you are creating brushes from planes, it's the best thing if you subdividing them. There is a file prepared somewhere in the line box. You can find a file that is prepared for brush creation, creating VDM brushes. But in general here, of course, we have no subdivision yet. So this is about 1,000 polygons. So we want to increase it. But if you press Ctrl D, this is what happens. So it rounds off the edge, which one is not really useful for every case, because it creates a clipping, a chipping. Let me undo this, and the reason behind it is here. So in geometry, when you press Ctrl D, you're actually pressing on divide. Now, by default, smoothing is on. So turn off smoothing, divide it a couple times until you reach about 1 million. And then turn it back on, because 99% we need it for simple organic shapes. We want it, we like it, but not needed for now. So Shift F, and now this is a really dense mesh. Okay, so even if we turn on symmetry, we can't really make a nice round stuff, especially not with an inflate brush. So BCT clay tubes. So it's not really possible. So what you can do is we can use symmetry in a different way. So let me just close brushes and go to transform and drag transform here and activate symmetry. So when you press X, this is basically turning on and off symmetry here. What we can use a radial symmetry. Now radial symmetry is in this way. This is around the X-axis, but we want to make it this way. So what to do is we have to pick the right axis, and the right axis is the blue one, the Z one. So let me switch to Z axis, but be careful. You can actually model on each and mirror on each axis, and that will create a kind of a virus ball. Okay, so you can sculpt on a ball with this technique as well. But let me turn this off, and staying true to the original idea, we can start creating nice shapes. And of course, if you want to make it more detailed or having more fun, then and more circular especially, then we can actually change the radial count, and 32. It's pretty neat. It's always depending on the model and the brush size you have. So here it works, and I will use a broader one and add some up, and a smaller one, and just build up, and BDS to carve in some things, maybe just moving around. And more than that, I will use a BMV move brush, and using Alt key to pull it out. Okay, so it's not just simply building it up. It is also by pulling out, and maybe this part should be pulled out as well. Okay. Alright, I like it. Now if you want to combine it further, you can always go back and tell that, okay, we should have a 6 radial symmetry, and maybe we want to add a BCT and inset here, like having like spokes or anything, a nice pattern, and just going this way. Alright, I like this pattern. Now how to make it into an alpha that we can use. In the alpha session, we have a from mesh. So this is a mesh. This is set in the front view. We can turn off perspective just to make sure that we see what's going on. And hopefully I'm staying away from sculpting the edges. Okay, you can do it, but the result will be better if you're just somewhat keeping in mind that we have a frame that's running around. And alpha and from mesh. And here we go. We can first of all frame it, zoom it a little bit in if we want to, and set the size. Now you don't need to go crazy about the size, because ZBrush is working pretty well with lower size textures as well. And this is called alpha, but don't forget that when you see black, that means it's transparent in ZBrush. When you see white, this means it's protruding, and the colors is looking like this ghosty, because when it's whiter, that means it's brighter, that means it's protruding more along the Z-axis. That was hit OK, and this was not saved automatically. If you want to keep it, you can go up here and export this to 3D Alpha 01. That's quite a creative name. I will stick to this. Now going back to our model, we want to use this on our example, and transform, and just split screen 2. Okay, zooming in, and want to have the brush. Now this is a little bit tricky, because can you use it with a clay brush? Of course, but the clay is a different animal. That means it's not super strong. And the main difference between the clay brush and the standard brush, let me just show you the BST standard brush and the clay brush in hand. So here we go. When you have the standard brush and start sculpting, let me turn off the lazy mouse. It's usually create lumps. Okay, so it's really hard to control, and everything is adding up to the existing surface. So if you just make one stroke wrong, you will end up having such little bumps all over. And while the main behavioral difference with a clay brush is if you press, I will use BCT now, or BCA, because BCA has no special thing turned on. So the way you're laying out these strokes, and if you wish you can build, but this build is much more controlled. Okay, so that is the big deal. That's why we are using this 90% for sculpting work. Okay, you have more control. It's you have a better understanding on the forms, and when you are using this, you're actually creating texture and detail for your model. Okay, now going back, BST standard brush, and BST standard brush, however, is great when you are using alphas, for example. So let me go with this alpha and using drag rectangle, and drag rectangle means I can sit in here and start pulling it out. Now, if it's barely visible, why that could happen? When you are using the drag function, the intensity of the brush is really defined by the maximal Z intensity amount. So if you crank it up, it will be much more relevant and it will be much more pronounced. Now, I don't know the resolution of the model, 2 million, so that's looking good. Focus shift should be lowered, and here we go. So this is the wheel, okay, in this case. Now the way I did the other wheels, it will be slightly different. So imagine this one works with everything, basically. Just to have a recap on here, this one works with everything. So if you want to use it for wrinkles, scales, whatever, this is a quick technique, and especially good because you can save out the map for yourself for later use. But if you have a situation where you have modeled something here and you're satisfied with that and you want to make a copy, then you can use an extractor brush. So BXT is one of the extractor brushes, and the extractor brushes are working this way. So we want to save this detail, and the way to save it is first adjust the brush size to make it fit. The other thing is just start over from the models above where the actual shape starts, and hit G, and that will switch to a different type of it's a scanning brush right now, and I'm placing the cursor and start dragging, and can you see that line in the middle? That is actually showing, okay, how much I have scanned. And when I'm over, and now mesh extraction is on the go, and because we have quite a few polygons, it will take some time, with especially with recording and with the Solid machine. But once it is done, then we can replicate it just like with kind of a roll. Okay, so hopefully it will be just there soon. Yeah, progress is still going on. So once it's done, you will see that here we have the new map, and let me just go in here and start using it by dragging out, and boom, there's a model, and the intensity is low, so if you want to make it more sharp, it will be there just like it. And of course it will follow the shape of the underlying mesh, and this is one neat way to create funny details all around and quick details. Okay, so in general, please keep in mind that the complexity of the mesh is not really matching with the resolution of the model that I have, but just because the speeding up recording is another goal this time, I kept it fairly low. Okay, so that is about the extractor brush and some shapes you can create. Another way, if we are going back to BST standard brush and choosing a dots and choosing an alpha, something else I wanted to show you is, let me choose a simple dot. You can actually drag and paint with this dot, and let me turn this to the back, and this will be a great zone to explain this thing. So because we want to talk about lazy mouse and lazy mouse related functions, so for this time let me go with the brush, and not exactly the stroke settings, so stroke, and lazy mouse. And the default standard brush is using lazy mouse, so L is the hotkey for lazy mouse, and lazy mouse is turning this function on. These are kind of default settings. Now it's depending on the brush, because lazy radius for this is set to 1, but for clay brushes this could be about 100 and more when you turn on lazy functions. But here's the deal. So when you are, let me lower this down slightly and make the focus shift a little bit normal. And when I start pulling, this is what happens. Oh, it's way too low, excuse me. So when you start pulling, you will see that lazy mouse has this rubber band, this tiny rubber band. Lazy radius is too small, it will be not much visible, but if I'm setting it about 20, now we have this little more relevant and more appealing rubber band we can pull, and that helps us to make this drive a little bit more smooth. Now when we are pulling, every time after a certain distance the pattern is laid down. So if you want a smooth pattern, you can set this to 0.1 or 0.05 or something like that, and you have a much more smooth pattern. If you want to create rivets, for example, then you can set it to 1.4 and just start pulling this, and now you have the rivets where you're looking for. Okay, so start pulling and then the rivets are there. This one is great for even tentacles and other things. I will just set this to 1 and show you something else. Let me set this to 10 and show you another example of how alphas can work for you. So we can go into modify. This is an alpha. Any alpha you select, these functions will work, and we can set to H times to 2 and H times V times to 2 as well. And when I start pulling, I can now create let's step 1.5 will work with this. I'm just looking for the right distance. Okay, so basically you can create tons of repeating dots. For example, also for hair sculpting, if you have an alpha like this, and the modifiers set this retime, we don't need retime, but we can increase these to 3, and then we can use it that way. Lazy steps should be a little bit lower, so here we go. We can just use this as well and use the smooth peak, for example, to carve in. Okay, it's not necessarily the best brush, because yeah, you have to have a higher polygon size for this, but this is one way to create rake-like shapes. Okay, so going back with a standard alpha and a little bit more smooth. Where are you? Smoother alpha. There you go. And let me reset this value to 1, and going back to lazy mouse, and this is how it looks now. Okay, so what else do we have? When you're using this lazy mouse function, one problem with that is if you have to rotate your model when you are doing it. So for example, I want to paint some fabrics, and imagine that we have a jeans and want to create some a shape that's for the sewing, for example, and I'm reaching a point where okay, I have to, okay, how should I move forward, and then how can I follow it? So I give it a try, and sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. So instead of having this issue, we have a function called lazy snap. So lazy snap is on at 100% when we draw, and we left off somewhere. We can start from the same position ideally. Okay, so it's drag and start from the same position, and as you see, it picks up. Now it's not 100% accurate all the time, and depending on the brush you're using, it will take kind of a build up, but this is a nice feature. There's something else that could be used for this lazy mouse function a lot, and we have this built-in brush, and some shapes are generated with this one on the model you see on the side. So, and that is basically, where should I, oh yeah, so these are on the hands, these are generated by that. So BIN, this was used for inflating a few things here and there to add some volume, to add some heft. That's a neat thing. If you have to smooth out this one, lower down the resolution, use a very light smoothing function and then go back up. Alright, smoothing works incredibly well on lower resolution. And the BCH is the chisel brush. Don't get confused, this is not Chisel 3D, this is a chisel brush, and it has really cool patterns. I don't know, I don't see right now the resolution. Okay, I think we are getting on a higher level. And let me start. Lazy mouse is on, lazy radius is about 100, so it's quite long. And I'm starting dragging, and as you see, this is generating a nice clean cut. Lazy snap is on, so I can follow easily. And in combination, this could be used with thick skin as well. And one more thing that we should talk about, Z intensity is way too much, and that is how to use it when you want to have polygonal lines. So for example, I want to create something like this. I'm switching to Z add, switching to something that has a little bit different line, maybe this double line, and want to generate something interesting. Now I'm going back, and yeah, so this is the pattern basically that I was using, which 100 lazy radius is way too much. So if you have smaller details, smaller parts, it's just an overkill. So now, as you see, this is a nice clean cut. I can increase the resolution if I need more, just to follow the structure and add some nice features here and there. And of course you can make an opposite and start just picking it up and going directions. Okay, so this is a kind of a different shape. What was used here, this is a simple clay build-up brush that's running across. So something else I wanted to show is, if you're starting the stroke and holding down shift and start dragging, the rubber band is just drags until you release the shift, and then it pulls and draws your line, and then you can start flow. Lazy snap is 100%. I'm holding down shift, start dragging and release, and boom, there you are. So this way you can generate nice shapes, nice geometrical shapes. So just holding shift, releasing, holding shift, releasing. This is good for panel work. In some cases, some people like to use it as a boundary, a frame, and then switching to a BCA clay brush. And a clay brush is great to fill this up. For example, you can fill it up, and once you have a fill, you can use a polish brush to just have a nice even surface. So BHP, that's an H polish, and just running here through. And of course you can do it much more with more attention to details, but in general this is the idea. So you have a patch, a wall, and then you can fill it up with a clay brush and use a brush like H polish. Now the way the head was made is something similar, so let me show you some brush techniques. But before we do that, maybe I will complete BCA. I will complete the lazy mouse part, because we have backtrack, and the use of backtrack is okay. I will combine few things here. BCB, clay buildup, and build up this area. Yeah, okay, good. And using BDT, sorry, BTD. This is trim dynamic, Trim Dynamic is a very, 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 very useful brush for hard surface sculpting. So now we have a kind of a flat surface, and also flatten this area, this side, and this side as well. And of course we can use a BMV move brush to just widen this as we want. Okay, so the backtrack is, I will use a flatten brush, BFA, for backtrack. Lazy mouse turned on, lazy radius is fairly small. The goal here is not really using the lazy function, the goal here is to use the backtrack function. So backtrack, and I will use a line. Plane is good, it allows you to pull through, but the most useful things are the line, spline, and path. So I will use snap to track, and snap to track is required if you want to start, and this is the backtrack path, and I'm moving backwards and the brush is moving along the path. So if I have a specific area where I want to use my brush, I will just pull the rubber band and then go back and forth on it, and can use the any brush basically, but this is particularly good around edges. Okay, so once you have, for example, this edge here, and we want to just create a nice little chamfer just to sculpt it, you can do it in many ways. This is just for quick concept hard surface sculpting that works fairly well. So let me just drop it here, and going back, maybe this is too small, the radius, snap, it's just 0, that's fine, relative, raise the radius, laser smooth. Okay, so starting from here, and yeah, even the laser radius 4 is too much, so yeah. Okay, so that's one use of the backtrack, and we have the spline, which one is a projected version of the backtrack. What does it mean? If you have a little bit more curvy surface, it allows you to pick more. I'm using the BCT clay tubes brush for now, and choosing lazy mouse, low raising mouse radius, backtrack, spline, snap to track, track curvature, and going back and forth between these lines. So I'm using now this pattern, which one is ridiculous. I'll go with no, basically nothing, just going back and forth. Laser smooth and laser radius. Okay. So now this is a standard, kind of standard stuff. Okay, and as you see, we have the line, and it's not going straight forward. This is the line version, so that's the main difference between the two. The projection is a little bit different depending on the model and the area. Okay, some cases this works better, some cases this works better, so it requires a little bit of an experimenting. You will see when we have a larger gap and the brush is also larger, then the line has a tendency to create like this folds, while the spline is working in a different manner as we're going along. Alright, the last one is the path. The path curve, the path snap. This is actually great if you have, if you're not 100% sold on the idea to create something. So for example, this was like that, so you can start over and just going back and start. So this could be a help for that, carving up some things. Okay, and we can use number 1. So I'm having a curve and then use 1. This is emphasizing the curve. Okay, so 1 is repeat last. Here we have other options, repeat last, and this is emphasizing the existing part. Furthermore, what else do we have? Definitely once we have lazy mouse, ZBrush is coming very handy, and for some detailing this is really a good technique to be used. And in general, lazy mouse can help a lot. Now, few more additions. For example, when we are talking about the boots, now as you see, the thickness of the legs here is totally different. To get a better the better thickness of here, we can do it by sculpting, but it is just way too much. It could be way too much in time, so I'll use a mask lasso. And yes, skip this node, so I will just masking and surround an area, maybe a little bit more, and just remove to make it more archy. Okay, so this is basically the shape in this case. And what I wish to do is going down, invert this whole thing, and we have deformations. Now deformations are, if you look at the names and just the names, it is fairly similar to the W gizmo. So with the gizmo parts, you can choose from. Okay, may I? My pen is a little bit messy. So that's you can choose from taper, twist, and smooth, other things. These are what you find here. These are working very well with complete models, and I like to use them mostly with complete models, like complete primitive parts. So one sphere, one cylinder, whatever, just to work on the base mesh, for example. Here, these I find them useful when you have to just quickly make up something within the surface, and some variations I would show some of the benefits. But in general, this is where we are now, and we will use the inflate balloon. And the silly thing is, these sliders are so sensitive, so it's better if you click in with the mouse and type in, I will type in 5 inflate balloon, and this will take some time to actually perform. And because we have 2 million polygons, of course it works better when you don't have any real levels. And as you see, this is too much. Now, what the problem with the sliders, it's not really a problem, but this is how they behave. So when you are changing the value, they will revert back to 0. So this is why my suggestion is, at least at the beginning, don't use it with a pen. Go in here, type in, and remember the setting you have. So if it's not working, and it's clearly not working and coming back, and this was 5, I will set it to 2.5 and go from there. The other reason I should warn you about using these sliders, because they are very sensitive, also the value side. So the values can be extremely low, like 0.0000 something, and still make a big change. And this is something internal in ZBrush. The way it handles values, it is a little bit different with the sliders, so keep it in mind. Now, so once we have this boot, then we can work on, and of course we can walk down, Shift D, and using a larger brush and smooth out things, and then sculpt more and more. Oh my god, it's so strong intensity. Okay, so we can do this. Now the other thing is, if you see this one is pretty flat, that sometimes you want to cut it and it's really hard to make a nice flat surface, and this is when the clipping brushes are just phenomenal. For beginners, it's hard to understand why we have a knife brush and why we have clipping brush and why we have trimming brushes. Now let me show this. Control and Shift. When you're holding Control and Shift, this is the selection part. And in the beginning, we have used the knife curve, which one's great if you are using Dynamesh, for example, just chopping and editing stuff. It's also good for many other things, but I like to use it a lot with Dynamesh. But we have clips and clip curve. Now what clip curve does is, here's the mesh, and I'm using clip curve, dragging it out, and moving along here. And clip curve is basically, it is not deleting polygons. Let me undo. You can see the structure. So this is the structure. And when the clip curve appears, clip curve is basically means flatten those polygons to that shape, to that flat shape. And this flattening function allows us to not destroy the geometry, but have something really nice and crisp. Okay, so it's still, if you want to make it perfect, you have to do it in a higher resolution, but you can use also age polish and just simply using simply smooth can help. But it's a great chance. Now, if you are using it a higher resolution mesh, please take the time, prepare for yourself, save your file. It may spend a minute with it. Okay, so that's about a little bit of a clipping. Now, once we are here at deformation, it's time to discuss a few things. So, if you have a mesh and you experience that the brush size is, even if you are at about 1,000, the brush is not big enough, this may happen. The reason is usually when you start out from a sphere, for example, a head, that sphere on its own is about 2 meters. So when you're growing the body, this will be about a building size. Now in ZBrush world, so when you're hitting Unify, Unify will scale down all your models according to the perfect size that works best with ZBrush and the ZBrush brushes. Now the problem with this Unify is that this one's only capable to scale one subtool. So both of these subtools are scaled. So I'm hitting on Unify, nothing really happens. Everything is working fine. But right now I'm just do we have a scale? Do we have a size? Yes, I will just increase the size. Now this is quite big. Okay, if you see compared to this one is oversized. And I'm hitting Unify, it will automatically resize it to fit in this 2 meter by 2 meter bounding box. If you have multiple subtools and you want to fit everything because you know it's one project and you want to export it, you should go to Z plugin and where you are now, UV master, subtool, not subtool. Where are you? Scale master, yeah. So many masters. So scale master is basically, here's this little function, ZBrush scale unify, and that is actually what it does. What it says. This way, unify your scene for ZBrush. It works best with subtools with a max XYZ size of it. So this is the explanation, and this will unify all your subtools. Okay, so that is the all visible subtools. This is why we like it. And it can save you a lot of headache in general. You can use Stager for fixing issues, but it's just convenient if you can unify all the stuff. Mirror is like if you have a model, if you have a part that's asymmetrical, and let me turn off lazy mouse and all the functions. So you can hit in mirror, and yeah, we have multiple subdivision levels. So early on, this mirror can help you. If you have subdivision levels and you still want to do it, you have to get rid of the subdivision levels, deleting all the higher and lower subdivisions and levels, and then mirror will work. Let me undo this, and something else from here that's really valuable. We have the polish features. Now, polish features are very, very good. If you don't want to use, for example, your smooth brush and you have an area where the model is a little bit blocky and not as defined, you can highlight. Let me mask this area. No, not this one. Something where we actually have details we want to get rid of. Okay, maybe the arm is not that good. Okay, I want to clean up this area. Okay. Nice. So polish is working this way. It takes some time till it performs, but then yeah, ZBrush a little bit jumps whenever it counts. It can really took up memory and CPU power. So don't be afraid. Sometimes it can work for a long minute or more, but it will end up making the whole thing. Okay, so as you see, this one is compared to the other parts, this one is really smooth now. And I have turned off symmetry. So now this one is the original and this one is the polished version. And the big difference, so we have these little square circles, and when you click on something it will use a slightly different algorithm, so you can give it a go. Polish is by default is set to, this is not the brutal, but usually these are the stronger ones. So when you just remove the inside, these are the stronger ways. Polish by features, polish by groups can be used if you have good poly groups, and it's better for hard surface sculpting. Relax is something that's I don't think everybody is using it, but it is really nice if you have to save a mesh. Where should I look? Okay, let me look at here. So can you see how much it distorted this one? So I will just use a mask pen, paint this area, and because it's not symmetrical now, I can use it, and it will take some time. So relax and start relaxing. Just pull it up and hope it will work. Okay, so there we are. It took about 2 minutes to complete, and this is how it looks. So the shape itself is not changed that much, but the structure, the topology is much more refined. As you see, there's a lot less stretch. It's much more even, which one is great to fine-tune things. All right, so relax is a friend. Of course, if you have a higher resolution, then it will be slower. But if you have to sculpt with a smaller brush and you have to follow your work, this time will really just a small investment compared to the whole set that can happen. Okay, and as you see, this is really a tiny thing, so we don't really see it if from a distance. All right, now going forward, we have this relaxed plane grid and morph to grid. Which one? These are used for VDM brushes, so it's enough if you know at this stage, if you know that this, if you have a bit messy structure, here is not that complicated or not as stretched out. But if you have something like an ear or a nose or something that's more complex, or a dragon scale that's angled in 3D, and then you have to use a morph to grid and relaxed plane grid sometimes to have a nice and very even technological structure. The topology. So Smart Resim is working in your favor. So let me just turn off now the mesh, and Smart Resim is working this way. So I will do a modeling here, and I'm not sure if it's working on the resolutions that we have. So Smart Resim, but it will do it. And it will take some time again. I will just turn off the recording for a second. So as you see, it just creates an average and tries to copy the best of both. So if I'm undoing this, this is the one side. We have nothing here. This is how much it protrudes. And when I'm going forward, you will see that the height is equalized, and this is getting a very similar type of build on both sides. So this is Smart Resim is also a very useful tool, and we have subdivision levels. We have quite a lot of subdivision levels. So and this can save your work in some situations. Alright, now what else? We can mask out an area, and I will shift the lower down parts and select this and blur the mask a little bit, invert the mask, and we have, for example, contrast, which one can boost things around. May I go higher? So you can see how much it comes in. Okay, so compare, this was the normal, and then it's going back. So contrast is really nice. If you have an area that's really nice, but it's not popping enough, this can really help. So it's like a design decision. Okay, do we care about this form? Yes, we do care. What else do we care? Maybe the chest. So start painting around, invert, and just going in here and contrast and just crank it up and see if it goes well. All right, so if you have a tendency to have a light hand and not making so much strong strokes, or you're hesitant a little bit, this is a great way to make your design and change up things. We have the inflate balloon and inflate. These are working slightly differently. Inflate balloon is usually, I think it's more useful in most of the cases. Gravity is such a fun thing. I really like it. So let me just pull this. This is excellent for, just creating a funny design. So now this has these long arms. You can go in either direction. So you can actually lift this up, and that is generating a different thing. And as always, you can just grab a portion, for example, the top portion, and just zoom, invert, and just add gravity like crazy. Okay, so now the head is melting. This one, if you like the head, you can actually save the model, cut it off, use a boolean, whatever. So it's a kind of a trickery that you can use if you want to spice up your model. You can see this dynamic. This is really nice design wise. Okay, let us go back and stop destroying the model. What else do we have? The one technique that can be really funny is and very good for clothing and for some parts. It's called thick skin. It's not as old, thick skin, but it's in general the one reason I really like it, because it's so simple. So if you just turn this on, it puts a limit, it puts a cap on your brushes. So I'm using now this clay brush, and it will not go any further than 20 from a distance. Okay, so for example, if I want to work on the model and just want to add some texture and just working around and use the BFA, so I have the stroke coming in and lazy mouse turned off for. So now it's pretty easy. The other thing is BCB, for example, you can use it in negative as well. So in negative, you can see how clean that bottom is. It's because thickness is set to 20, so this is full clean, and you can just build up and it will be stopping at 20. So again, great tool for not just for simply sculpting the details and carving folds for parts, but actually great for creating pocket-like things. So I will set this to 10, which one is not so high, and maybe start carving in. And then we can go back and just add something inside, and that pulls up a bit. We don't have to worry that much that how much it pulls, because it will stop at a value. Okay, so smoothing should be a little bit stronger. I'm releasing the shift key when I'm smoothing on a go, and BFA, flatten brush, and just having a little bit of a cleanup. Okay, and BPI, pinch, and just making this slightly sharper. Okay, so clean up things. There we go. Okay, so this may be one very quick and dirty design idea. Okay, if it's good, we can keep it. We can make it work. Again, so thick skin helps you to not destroy your model too much. If you have some smaller details, it could be like a safety thing. To not go too deep or not go too high. And one thing that may be used if you're using thick skin and using it with a small distance, like 1 for example, you can use it with smoothing a lot. So I'm holding the shift and it can make things very, very smooth with real ease. Okay, all right, so that is about thick skin. What else? The 3D gizmo. So 3D gizmo in general, so what you can do with 3D gizmo, let me walk down. If you press W, this is where 3D gizmo is. If you press on this button, it will relocate the orientation of the 3D gizmo. If you're hitting on the house icon, it will just reset everything in center. Now in this case it's not an issue because we're already at the center of the model. If you use this one and not pressing anything, just pressing on this one, it will realign the 3D gizmo to the original layout, but it will take and rotate the model as well. So if you want to reset just the gizmo, hold down Alt key, click on this one, and as you see when you're holding down Alt key, it will open up the lock, so now you have access to some changes. The same thing is happening if you're holding the Alt. You can actually move things this thing around. You can always reset rotation or reset position of this thing. When you have a masked area, well, may I have a masked area, invert it, and using this icon it will jump to the middle of this area. If you have, for example, let me do this D, and using mask, but using drag rack mask, using an alpha like this one, and I want to pull out something, so I'm dragging it out. Okay, this is too smooth. Focus shift is lowered. Okay, this is much more crisp. Invert it, and want to use the 3D gizmo, relocate it, and I want to pull it out, but I want to pull it out in the right direction. So how to do that? If you were using Alt key and tapping on the model, it will actually realign, reorient your 3D gizmo. So sometimes it's not working that smooth because you have to click inside the 3D gizmo. Now here's a trick. Use Alt, click away, and then go back, visit your surface. Now this 3D gizmo is somewhere else. We don't have to worry about this. And just selecting the plane, and now you have the right angle, and then you can pull this out a little bit better. Okay, the more faces you have, the harder it will be to find the right face. Okay, so if it's a problem, if it's an issue, don't forget that. All right, so let me clear the mask, use the smooth, relax smooth, and just clean this up. Okay, so this is how the back parts were made. So if we're going back to subtool, visibility, transform, split screen to 1. So on the back, these were made like this. All right, so what else with the 3D gizmo? The other thing that you can do for quick posing is if you're walking down Control Shift D and holding down Control and dragging from an area, it is actually creating a mask, and the unmasked area is where your cursor is pointing to. So here's the deal. Starting from here, and just a second for the quick save. Starting from here, let me click away. And starting from here and dragging, alright, so Q, Alt click away just to have some room, and holding down Control and clicking on here and dragging, and as you see the way I'm dragging the direction, now this gizmo is updating. I can Control click in to blur, but Control is also selecting an area, so be careful, and using Alt and reorient the gizmo. and look it from the front as well. Move it in this direction, rotate it, and now I can just move the arm. Okay, so that's one more thing. If you want to mask an entire part, you can just control and click on the masked area. So control and click. Let me delete the mask, control and tap on the model. You can see now these the polygroups are recognized and automatically unmasked. So I'm blurring now the mask, and I can turn back on symmetry, but I don't have it now. So if I wish, I can move now these two arms, or control and using control and alt key and add, but that was a little bit off now. All right, so this is how it goes. Control tapping on a polygroup, it will unmask that polygroup. Control and dragging, it will create a mask with that direction. Okay, so this is good for manipulating fingers and other parts. Works best with a lower resolution. There's something else we haven't touched yet, but this one's used a lot. This part here. So when we have a model with multiple elements, and especially when we have folders. Now let me go off with a split screen. So we want to see, this is the original body that we had. And as you see, we have head, chest, and all the parts. Now we can actually select multiple parts at the same time. So let me go with the head, and for example, I want to move the head and neck together. So the way to do it is technically, if everything else is hidden, so let me just hold down Shift and click on this and turn on the visibility of the head. Where is the head? We have the buttocks here. Where is the head? Visible count, and make it head. Where are you? Yeah, this is the head. So let me turn it back on. So now if I'm switching to move, I can turn this on, and that means everything that is visible, it's okay. We have to turn off symmetry. Everything that is visible could be moved together. And then if I'm switching back and showing everything, now this is what's happening. So we have moved these two parts away. So this is basically move all tools visible. The real deal is not this one. The real deal is that you can select a folder, clicking on the gear icon of the folder, and tell that transpose set. And that allows you to move the whole thing. Now the reason why we have transpose set and transpose add and transpose sub, this one it's a little bit not so self-explanatory. So let me just go back, undo, and simply leave that move mode and explain it with the hands. So let me close this, select the arm and transpose set and W and OK. We have a pending thing, which one should be accepted or reset. Okay, so accept, there we go. And going back to the original location and holding perspective is not needed, alt to move, and yeah, I can move now both parts. Now what if I want to move the hands with it? So I'm going to the hands part, transpose add, and now I can move the hands as well. And then if I want to turn off the arms, I can transpose sub the arms, reposition the whole thing, holding down alt, and move it to the right location, and reorient a few things, and maybe make some changes like this. Okay, and then I'm turning this off and good to go. Okay, so this is a neat way to reposition a few things. Going back with the mesh body. So once you have a kind of final thing like this figure, we can create the whole painting stuff is nothing fancy. The only interesting thing with the painting is the BPA painting used with a carbon fiber pattern, and that was Z add was used with an intensity. Okay, so that is the BPA brush using with a drag rect. Alpha is I'm importing the alpha, but this alpha is basically just a simple JPEG file, a kind of a gray tone JPEG file. So I'm not even converting to black and white. When you import something as alpha, it would be turned to black and white. So sometimes you don't even have to use black and white images, and they are as they are. And yeah, we want to use some colors, and Z-add intensity should be a little bit lower. And let me just pull this out, and as you see, we have this pattern, because some areas this red will appear, and this is also creating an emboss effect. All right, so this one is we're working with everyone, basically with everything. Okay, you can choose any pattern you want, and of course you can spice up things. All right, so to present the model, what else? When you have to work, basic material is just a general material, which was not really ideal, but the skin shade is could be a little bit glowy, but this is how the colors are actually looking like the best. But this one's not as good for sculpting. This is better for an overall thing once you have the colors and everything properly set up. You can adjust light, which one is I like to use it this way. Enable customize and use there's a hotkey for the light, that's Ctrl P, but this is it can freeze the machine, so it's better it's for testing. Okay, so just to look around how things are working. The other thing that you can use is very useful. Usually we set it in the beginning, but right now I'm just already jumping in here. This in draw mode we have the camera, and the camera's the focal length is about 50 millimeters, which one is it's not really ideal for smaller objects. For a human, it's just kind of a middle ground. It's okay, but I do like to prefer. I do like using 85 or 70. So what happened? 70. I'm telling you now. Okay, in perspective. So that means this whole perspective is not as super strong. You can see this. If you see the bottom, the higher the number of focal shift, focal shift of the field of view, that will be the less distortion, which one is again especially good if you are modeling smaller objects. Okay, what about the turntable rendering? So how to create a turntable rendering in video for a presentation for yourself is where we have the movie, and here's the deal. So first of all, window is recording the window itself. I'm gonna just quickly show my settings. So I'm recording the document, which was actually the part we want to see, large as a size. This would be a turntable. Turntable related modifiers are like this. Spin frames, if you set it to 180, this is a fairly fast spin. We can set it to 360, which one is not a super it's a normal time. Now if you are using no fancy rendering, then you can use spin cycles and increase the number of spin cycles. And what else? Overlay image, I should put it in here in the side because it's just annoying to keep it open. So overlay image, you can use your own overlay image if you wish. But right now I'll just use it to opacity is reduced to 0, so this means it's not appearing. You can left to right, top to down position change. Title image is also there by default. It's just reduce the fading time, so it will not appear. If you see any logos or anything, you have basically missed these two things to set. And now record turntable. Let me hit F and move it to the front and start turntable, so it will go through and start recording this whole thing. And once this record is done, this could be fairly slow right now because we have 3 full turns. Once this is done, this is written in the memory, so it's not compiling a movie right away. It's written in memory. This is why you have a delete button here. So if you want to redo it again, usually it's easy to just clean the cache, delete the movie, and then hit again. You can record some tutorials this way also, and cursor moves and other things. So this is a great way to educate yourself and keep a document. For example, if you have a technique that you want to use and save for yourself, or you have a finding, this is a great thing. Okay, so once we have this rotation, and we can go to play movie, just a test. This is the movie, and of course if you want to save it out, you can just go to export. So export, and that would be ZBrush movie MPEG, and it's great. So now it's making the changes, and it will record the whole thing, and my cursor is there. Okay, so it is exporting as an MPEG. The other thing is, if you want to create a fancy rendering, we haven't discussed rendering settings, but you may by accident experience that. So if you are using Shift R or clicking on this BPR button, the rendering is done. Now you have shadows, and if you start your turntable this way, let me delete the movie. Yes, no, I don't want to save it. You can save it as kind of a movie file, which was not compiled and not a final MPEG format, just in a kind of a ZBrush temp type of movie file. So when you have rendering active and you hit turntable, that means it will render every frame all around. So it takes way more time. All right, thank you very much. And that was it for today. See you next time.